The Biden-Harris hyperinflation has made it really tough for small businesses, and they've done that consistently for the past several years. Consumers may only see the final prices on the shelves. They don't think about the fact that small business owners have to pay a lot more money for the wholesale product that he or she is selling, or maybe for the food that makes up the meals they're cooking at their family run restaurant. In all likelihood, the owners of small businesses have kept prices as low as possible for you, but they've taken a larger share of their profit right out of their pockets just to stay in business. The profit is what pays the employees. And when times are really tight, employees, well, they have to be let go. And the owners are then forced to jump in and do more of the work just to keep the business open. Remember, too, that these small business owners are paying a huge amount of money in taxes to the federal and state governments, which ends up paying for a great deal of what the rest of the town and the schools run on. When Donald Trump was president, he had run his own businesses for decades. He knew what it took to fuel the growth of the country. One of the first things that he did was get rid of years and years of useless regulations that had also been layered onto the small business owners. So much that many had to hire separate companies just to fill in all the regulation forms. Many of the regulations were simply a form of government harassment. Things such as an EPA regulation that requires the small business to keep track of rainwater that falls on their property that can pool up in a storm. Now, before you plant some azaleas around the restaurant you have, just to be able to keep up with the rain, think about that. That way, if the water runs off the property and eventually into a creek or river, that small business owner can keep track of it and make sure the water is safe for the fish. Imagine the regulation and many hundreds like it, and all you're trying to do is sell pizza and make a living. Well, President Trump did away with a lot of the silly regulations, and he let business be business. So far, all we know from the Harris-Walz team is that they want to raise taxes on businesses. And if you're a Democrat, surely they will want to introduce even more controlling regulations. It's just the way it works. Or not. It doesn't have to be that way. Especially according to Linda McMahon, who was the small business administrator under President Trump and is also chair of the America First Policy Institute. Linda, welcome to the show. And I want to get right into the importance of small business in the country, because I'm just convinced a lot of Americans don't realize that most jobs, most of the prosperity in this country, it doesn't come from the big multinational corporations. It comes from small business. Talk about the impact of small businesses in this country and why we all need to care.
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Governor, for having me on the show tonight. And I remember when then President-elect Trump asked me to serve as administrator for the Small Business Administration. He said, I've got a novel idea. He said, I'd like to have someone be the administrator who's actually built the business and understands what small businesses and big businesses go through. And I think it was that, that really inspired me to want to come on and work in the administration, because we really did have a president who understood the value of small businesses. You had such a wonderful intro to all that small businesses contribute and the things that impact them. And President Trump was absolutely focused on getting rid of regulations that did negatively impact small businesses, like the one you cited with the water. For we were charged, all of the agencies were charged for every new regulation you wanted to put in place, you had to get rid of two. And it wound up being not just two, but sometimes 8, 10, or more regulations. And now small businesses are facing a stronger regulation under the Biden-Harris administration. Let me give you a staggering number. It's costing small businesses over the past 3 years about $1.7 trillion, trillion dollars in new regulations, and over $300 million, not dollars, 300 million pages of paperwork. Can you just imagine that burden on small businesses in the country? Now picture the little, bodega owner on the corner, or the pizza place, or the barber shop, or the nail salon. Now those are typically what we think about with small businesses, but small businesses can go up to almost 500 employees as well. but they're not as severely impacted sometimes as those very, very small businesses.
You know, the economy is uncertain. You never know whether your money's worth as much today as it was yesterday. It's one of the reasons I buy gold from American Hartford Gold. American Hartford Gold has earned a 5-star rating and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. Be sure to tell them Mike Huckabee sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. Call 844-417-1010 or text Mike to 998899. You'll be glad you did business with American Hartford Gold. Contrast the Trump era and the Biden era in terms of if a small business owner is working, what differences, and you started to answer that before, but contrast the two.
Well, let's just look, for instance, at the cost of goods today. With the high gasoline prices that we're seeing, the high cost of electricity, even rental on these commercial properties where small businesses are located, all of those costs are higher and higher and higher. Under the Trump administration, we kept lowering those costs and increasing the profit margin for small businesses. There was clearly more cash flow to those businesses, and every business owner I talked to I traveled the country as a small business administrator. I went to every state, to all 68 district offices for the Small Business Administration. I talked and visited to small business owners around the country. They all told me that if the tax cuts went through, and that's what I was talking to them about, they would invest them back into their businesses. They would hire more people. They would grow, sometimes grow their plant, if you will, and just bring new lines of business. I'll give you a little example. There was a bread baker just outside Boston that I visited, and he did a lot of white label bread baking for many grocery store chains across the country. And he said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "if these tax cuts go through, I already have the space." And he took me and he showed me. He said, "You see this space over here?" He said, "I'm going to put a new oven in there. That oven will cost me $1 million, but I'll be able to buy it because I'll be able to write it off the year in which I buy it under the current tax laws that were being proposed. You could write it off the year in which it was bought." He said, "I already have accounts ready to go. Already have more employees ready to hire." He said, "I can't wait to see this go through." I heard that over and over again, and you don't hear that today.
I'm also thinking that there's so many dangers that if we were to get into a situation where we continue to see inflation, that's money that's not just out of the pockets of business owners, but out of the pockets of the people who buy from the businesses. Uh, but the Democrats seem to have some policy ideas they're purporting that make no sense. Unrealized gains on capital investments. And in other words, we would pay a tax on a capital gain that we haven't even cashed in. I mean, that's almost like punishing you for making an investment that is working. I don't know of anything crazier than that.
Well, I mean, that's just when you think about it, take money out of your pocket that you don't have to pay on a capital gain you've not yet realized is just bizarre. So there may be some people who think, well, that's all business. Maybe that's more big business, and I won't feel that impact. It could be your home. So let's just think about that. It could be a homeowner who would have to pay tax on that capital gain that they've not realized. They haven't sold their home. It's just appreciated in value. So now we're going to have to pay this capital gains tax. It's just the craziest stuff I've ever heard. And that's, you know, Governor, when we get down to more and more of the economics that I think first the Biden Harris administration, now the Harris potential Waltz administration would like to put forth, it should be a little bit scary that we see the hand of big government socialism coming in to continue to rob us, of our economy, and just not look at this as a capitalistic society. I mean, this country has grown and thrived under capitalism. It's equal opportunity for all.